Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted and privileged to have a conversation with Karin Haselböck. Karin, welcome to the program.
Welcome. Hello.
Allow me to introduce Karin to the audience. At the moment, you are part of the leadership team of Ashoka Europe. Before that, you were heading the PR marketing team of the Austrian ropeways and lifts for the winter tourism. You're leading Trigos as part of an NGO looking at corporate social responsibility. You've worked in almost all sectors. You've worked in companies in Europe and America, large and small, educated both in Austria, the US and UK. And also what I find quite interesting, you also support people when they go into the wilderness to fast for 4 days and 5 nights on their own, the Vision Fast Guide. So fascinating. We're going to talk about systemic change, social innovation. That's it. Again, Karin, thank you so much for being on the program.
It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to the conversation we're going to have.
And I'd like to actually start off with your current role, Ashoka. For those people who do not know the Ashoka Organization, what does it do?
Ashoka is one of the largest networks of social entrepreneurs in the world. You know, it was founded 40 years ago, and our founder, Bill Drayton, he coined this term social entrepreneur. And for, I think centuries, we've had people, individuals who really created systemic change, like Maria Montessori or Henri Dunant, with the Red Cross, or Florence Nightingale. So they all created change, but we didn't have this expression of social entrepreneur. And that's what Bill Drayton coined 40 years ago. And by now we have a network of around 4,000 social entrepreneurs, Ashoka Fellows, as we call them, around the world. We work in around 90 different countries, and we create social innovation. And by now we have shifted from focusing only on social entrepreneurs towards shifting on what we learn from the social entrepreneurs, that we need a world where everyone is a change maker. So that is our vision. How can we create a world where everyone is empowered to really shift towards the good of all?
Okay, got that. Just to get a couple of definitions clear, so we're talking about talking on the same page. What's a social entrepreneur?
A social entrepreneur is someone who has a very innovative idea to change something within a system. He has a business mindset, he creates some business models. He's integral, so he has an ethical fiber, and he really wants to have a strong impact in the world, in whatever area it is. It can be in the area of inclusion, in the area of environmental change, societal change, whatever. I'll give you an example. We all use Wikipedia to get some information on the internet, right?
Yeah.
And this person, Jimmy Wales, who founded Wikipedia, is an Ashoka Fellow. And he had this idea of saying, how can we create a world where everyone can achieve knowledge, through the internet? And he said, okay, he doesn't want to give, have this as a private company, but he wants to do it open source. And that's how he founded this Wikipedia. And we were the ones, Ashoka was the one that gave him a kind of stipend through foundations and money we get from these people, so that he can really set up his program during a number of years, 3 years normally. And then he has then he has a kind of business model to continue. But for 3 years, he gets the stipend. And so now we have a situation in the world where everyone knows Wikipedia and no one needs to pay for it. Hopefully you give some donations, but you don't need to pay because it is open source. And by that, we have achieved, real innovation in the world, social innovation.
Okay, got that. So, and is Wikipedia your flagship example of what social innovation is, or are there more examples you can share?
Oh, I could share, we have 4,000 of these social
that's true. Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yes. So I can share many more stories, but I would like to share one story. I think that's one of my favorites. Have you ever heard about the hero rats? The hero rats?
Maybe I should have, but please.
No, but it's one of a fantastic story. There is Bart Wietjens, a Belgian.
Yeah.
And he always had rats. He loved rats since his, youth. And then he discovered that rats really smell incredibly good, and he founded an organization, Apopo, which tried to train rats to be kind of in a certain system on the fields and smell landmines, and they are able to walk within a certain bamboo system, and they are trained to walk. And then, when they smell a certain landmine, they put up their tail, and then an expert comes and can take away this landmine. And he has created a system where he trains people to train the rats. And it's a much cheaper way for especially countries, for example, in Africa, to achieve landmine-free areas. And by doing that, he achieved, for example, in all of Mozambique, it's landmine-free now. Can you imagine? It's incredible. And what that means for the people there, to be able to just run out into the fields, the kids will no longer be afraid to walk into the forest because it's landmine free. So that's a wonderful example, but only one of 4,000.
Okay. Now, so far we've explored a little bit what social innovation is, but you also mentioned the term systemic change a couple of times. What is systemic change?
I think if we look at, for example, Wikipedia, that was an example I gave before, this is systemic change because you create in a certain system, and in this system, it is the knowledge system, basically. You create something, you change something in a system, you add something, you take something out in order to achieve a certain result, So if we look at system change, and I have this circle here, this is the system. Mm-hmm. You have to look at what kind of input do you give into the system, and with who, often it's the partners that you have to think of. So with who do you ally in order to achieve a change? And then within the system, you have certain rules that you might question, that you change. You have certain relationships, certain resources that you put in. And then if you shift something in this system, so this is the theory behind it, then you create a different outcome. So in the case, for example, I would like to share another example of an Ashoka Fellow. It's Hoffmann, a German women's doctor. He said that using, these mechanical way of finding out if women have breast cancer is not a good way forward. So if we once a year, for example, I need to go to this machine and I get my breasts pressed, it's really not very nice. So he said, hey, what if we ask young women, blind women, mm-hmm. to learn how to touch the women in order to find out if there are any knots? And so he created a system where if you look at the same example that I gave before, so he said, within the system of women's health, with whom did he partner? He partnered with all sorts of insurance companies. And of course, he created a special education for blind women in order to let them within the system work differently. So he created, for example, a system where these blind women are now empowered to have good work. He created a system where women are trained through these blind women how to touch themselves in order to find out if everything is okay with their breasts. Mm-hmm. So women are empowered themselves. And he created a system where it's not so expensive anymore. These machines are really expensive to touch yourself, or these women touch you, and you find out even much earlier if there is any troubles with your breasts. So for example, a doctor, if I can show you, a doctor can find out a knot like that. And these trained women find out knots like that. So only a few millimeters. Whereas the
rather than a couple of centimeters, couple of millimeters.
Exactly. So you can imagine, I even have some numbers here. Yeah. Wait, let me check. I think Ashoka did a study together with McKinsey in Germany, because he's German. Mm-hmm. If you rolled out this system in all of Germany, you would save, I think, 160 million euros per year, because you wouldn't have to use these expensive machines all the time. And you would, of course, also in terms of external effect, you would save women's lives, which is, you can't even put a number to that. But if you think of all that would you really shift something, and he's trying to scale this now to other countries in Europe, for example.
I got that. And okay, so at the moment, till now, you've given us some examples of what Ashoka's doing, but I also, because this is the brand called You, I'd like to know, what is your role here and how did you get involved?
So my role at Ashoka.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay, so my brand, it's interesting when I think of, being part of Ashoka, but also thinking of my own brand. So thank you for asking this question. I really haven't reflected upon that so much yet. So if I look at how I came to Ashoka, you have to know I have a business background. So I was working at a company, a big company in Austria, and they just offered me the role of being vice president strategic marketing there, having 15 people in my team, having 3 million euros per year as a budget.
Okay.
And having a car, I don't know what else. And I had the choice between working for Ashoka, earning less, you know, having, I don't know, a train ticket in the public transport in Vienna, and working for Ashoka and seeing what it should be, you know. And guess you can tell what kind of choice I made. And, you know, honestly, Fritz, it was kind of a decision between the old world and the new world. Because I know that I can work in a company like that. But where is my purpose? My purpose is not for the shareholders to earn more money, but I want to give my gifts or my personality, my knowledge, my experience to an organization that does something that hopefully changes the world for the better. So
now,
that's what I.
Okay, now has this always been like something that you had in the back of your mind in all those years you've been working, or was it okay? Now I come to an age where if I've earned my money, I've done my part on the business side. Now I'm going to reinvent my role. So, so did you wake up on at a certain day? Hey, I have to do something, or was it already there somehow?
I think it was already there. If I think back of the beginning of when I studied, you know, the Brundtland report came out. I don't know if you remember that. That was a time in the beginning of the 90s, the Brundtland report from the Norwegian Prime Minister.
Yeah.
She prepared this report saying what sustainability is. And I was fascinated by that, you know, because I always had this feeling that, for example, being a student of management, you can't just only work for money. You can't just only say, I want to, you know, meet the expectations of consumers or customers, but it should always have this aspect of what kind of effect does it have on society? What kind of effect does it have on the environment? What kind of effect does it have on the social side, you know, on the employees or whatever? So I don't know why, maybe because my father was in a union, you know, I always had this mindset of there is not just one thing in capitalism. You have to look at the whole picture. You have to look at all the aspects. And I love the Indian tradition of thinking of 9 generations ahead, you know, that and sustainability is something like that. So it is always about looking ahead and trying to predict, trying to think of, you know, looking at the picture in a broader sense. And this is something that always was part of me. And I think I was a social entrepreneur, you know, I wasn't a social entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur. And I'm sure many of the listeners and you, as far as I've gotten to know you, you're also an entrepreneur, which means that in whatever environment you are, you try to shift something, you try to change. And for example, when I worked, you mentioned first my job as a PR and marketing director for the Austrian lift. I had an experience that really made me think, how can I change the safety part on the slopes? And I knew that in my role, I can't change legislation. In this case, it would be wearing helmets. It was in the 90s, you know. I knew that I can't change legislation because my boss told me, no, you can't try to change legislation. It could influence our budget because people don't want to go to the slopes if they have to wear helmets, you know. So I had to find another way. So what I did, and I described this first with you when I said, this is systemic change, you know, what do you input, what do you get? What I tried is bring people together from all areas that would be able to support me in my way forward to reach a safety on the slopes, that kids wear more helmets. So I asked the Ministry of Education. I brought in the Austrian Skiing Association with all the big stars, you know, like Hermann Mayer, people like that. I brought in the insurance companies. They were our enemies, basically. They always said, so many, you know, accidents on the slopes. But I said, hey, you need to bring in unlikely allies. And so all of them, also the helmet producing companies, were part of the team. And we weren't a team in the beginning. I invited them. And I remember sitting on the table, everyone looking at me and saying, you know, what is she doing here? I mean, why do we sit together with these people? And just 1 year later, we sat together on the same table and we were a team, trying to reach the same goal, you know, from all different aspects. So the helmet producing companies produced helmets that would attract kids, or the Ministry of Education, we organized a huge drawing competition, for example, so that kids would think, yes, wearing a helmet is cool. They could draw their, you know, dream helmet. And it was beautiful, all the paintings we got, you know.
Hey, Karin, somehow I'm suspecting that what you've done for that business environment is going to be the same for Ashoka, but you just you haven't shared with us what your secret is. I mean, so a year before, everybody well, I would say an NEB, but there definitely wasn't a team. What did you do to make that multi-stakeholder set of companies, organizations? How did it become a we? What did you do? What's the secret?
I think one of the secrets is that I considered them equal.
Yeah.
You know, I brought them together and I didn't say, hey, I'm the boss. I'm the one that now shows you what we need to do. But I was trying to find common ground. So approaching them and saying, what is your approach? You know, I would love to do something for kids on the slopes that they wear helmets. How do you see it? And then kind of getting the input from everybody, trying to find a common denominator. That was one of the most important things. And I also think that what it needs is, there is a certain, normally in shifting change, you know, creating impact, you need a backbone organization. And I was this kind of backbone organization. I pushed it forward, but in a way that was inclusive. And I remember once before you sent me some questions, you know, saying, so what did you learn from your biggest mistake, for example? That's a mistake I made before, you know, I learned that if you push ahead, if you say, I'm the leader, I know where we have to go, and you can add a little bit. This is not the way it works. So my recommendation for whoever listens is, please, if you want to be inclusive, you have to listen to others. You have to find a good way forward of saying, this is what we want to achieve, but at the same time, listening to them, how they can shift it. And then sometimes a secret is that you kind of put ideas into their head that they then think is their own idea. So that's one little secret to how to bring people together and to create a we. But it is also the common shared goal, you know. I really try to focus on saying, guys, imagine all these young kids on the slopes. I don't want them to be hurt anymore when they fall down. So we shared this, you know, understanding to what we really want to achieve, the vision, a shared vision.
So it's building that common narrative, that story, get people behind that story. So once you've created that story in the minds of people, then they start to be able to contribute. Hey, well, this is something I could do to get there.
And I think what's also a secret is that you try to really look at everyone and what they can get out of it in a way. So for the insurance companies, it was, or the companies that kind of always look at the numbers of accidents, it was good that they could say, hey, we participated in a project that would reduce the numbers.
Yeah.
For the helm producing companies, it was a business, you know, producing helmets even more. For the trades, it was a business. For the Austrian Skiing Association, it was a PR project, because all these skiing stars, you know, they could say, you know, guys, you know, kids, we really drive really fast on the slopes, and you can do the same, but please wear a helmet. So for everybody, they could take something out of it, you know? And so that's one of the secrets to work together, that everyone has an advantage. And then he or she brings something in. And by the way, by now we have 99.4% are wearing helmets. Everybody's wearing helmets. It's just normal. So, and that's one of the major, I didn't mention that before, but that's one of the major aspects of systemic change. If you can create a mindset shift, if there is something new and people don't even remember how it was before. Because it's so normal.
Being a skier myself, I am amazed that almost overnight, but it took just like 1 or 2 years between you look stupid if you wear a helmet to you look stupid if you don't wear a helmet.
Exactly.
And nobody could explain where that change came from, but it did happen. And now today, if you go out skiing, you do wear a helmet because that's normal.
Yeah. And that's the secret as well, I think, because you don't even know why it shifted.
Yeah.
But in the background, if you look in the background, there were lots of forces, but not just one force. You know, I only contributed to the solution. But because I was able to get lots of people involved, also those that would normally not get involved, it kind of, you know, it had a ripple effect. And then lots and lots of people were engaged in it.
Did this whole wearing helmet thing start in Austria or in other countries?
In Austria.
Okay, so we shouldn't. So it's a public secret. It did start with you, with realizing.
No. I don't think I can put my ego on that like that. I contributed to the solution. I was crucial in a certain way, but I contributed. It was not me alone, and that's the secret of systemic change. It can never be one person.
So okay, full stop there. Next question in this context. You briefly mentioned you referred to your father, you referred to Indian philosophy. That begs me to ask you, where do you draw your inspiration from? What are your sources?
I truly believe that whatever we do on the outside always needs to start from the inside, you know? And so what my resource is that I'm an extrovert and an introvert. And I know that I really need this time for myself in the forest, for example, where I can do a moving meditation. So I'm not the person that would sit there and do sand like that. I couldn't do it. I'm too active, I think. But what I can do is go into the forest and get into a kind of mind frame that enables me to go into my inner room, I call it, and it's this connection to the universe, I think. So this inner room is where I feel that I'm connected to eternity in a way. So I think one day, if I die, if you believe that we are real and we die in this world, it depends. But one day, if I die, I will always still be connected to that. So I truly believe that my spirit is the real essence of who I am. And I think going into the forest connects me to this eternity in a way. And so my resource is certainly that. My resource is the people I love around me, to connect with them, community. My resource is swimming. I love swimming. It's just incredible. I feel that I'm part of the universe if I'm in the water. Maybe it's because we come from the water.
Yeah.
So these are my resources, I think. And I really love my job. I think I couldn't work for an organization where my purpose is not aligned anymore. I couldn't do it anymore. Okay. So you asked me before, did I wake up one day? No, but I think it's sharpened to a certain extent. The older I get, the more I believe I have to be one. I can't just be, this is the person working for an organization, and this is the person at home, and this is the person, being engaged, I don't know where. Yeah. It has to be one.
Okay. Does that mean, do you ever see yourself going back to the business side of society, or are you going to stay where you are right now?
I'm not sure. I could be open. I think what I see is a shift, and that's the shift that we also create within Ashoka. I try to live everyone leads kind of leadership style. And so if I find an organization where I feel that I can bring that there, I could imagine going back to business. And I really, truly think that business needs to change like that. They won't be able to find any people working for them anymore, especially now in a situation where we have limited resources. I think that these shifts need to take place. And I think it could be a challenge to bring this know-how to a business organization. But if they had a still very, hierarchical mindset, that's where I left, in an organization where I knew I couldn't fight against that like that. If you have an open mind, if you have, leaders who say, let's change that. But if it's too closed and too hierarchical, I couldn't do it anymore.
Okay, I got that.
Same like you, I think, huh, Fritz?
True. Yeah, I'll admit that's applies for me as well. I don't think I'll ever be able to go back. That's my current thinking. But what I've also come to realize when I research your background, you are also very much interested in helping others, train the trainer, help people, coach people. I see you're nodding, so you recognize this. Where does this come from? This need, this urge almost to help others?
I wouldn't really know where it comes from. I wonder if, especially what I talked about, in my earlier years, knowing that my father always said that it's important to be in unions, to take care of others. I saw my mother taking care of my grandparents. So it was a normal way of life in our household, I would say. And I think this need to be a change maker, to create a change for the good of all, is something that probably isn't within everyone. The question is if you can live it, if you have the right, environment, the right parents, the right school or whatever, where you are able to do it. And if you have if you can strengthen your own resources.
Okay, so talking about the right environment, so okay, I got the right parents, the right school. You live in Vienna. Now, Vienna is the most livable city in the world. It's always been for the last 10 years on the number one, sometimes number two spot. Has that helped get you where you are right now as well, or is it not relevant? So is that a part of that environment where you're fortunate enough to grow up in?
Well, I didn't grow up in Vienna. I grew up somewhere else, but I went to Vienna to study, and I kind of got stuck after working in different countries, like you mentioned before. But I think it's wonderful to live here, as you mentioned, because you have so much security, so much green. You know, I need the forest, I need the green. You have such a beautiful cultural life. So all that is important for you to kind of, you know, to be a strong personality or to enjoy your life here. But in terms of my business or side or where I work, you know, I could work everywhere. For Ashoka, I mostly sit like that online and work with people all over the world, so it wouldn't matter. But may I just briefly reflect upon what you said before? Because, you know, I'm really privileged. I think we all realize that living in this Western world, we are so privileged. And I think that's one of the impetus for me to see if I can work or do something for others, because I think we have an obligation in this world, those that are privileged to share our knowledge, our experience. And I always felt that, you know, the older you get, I don't know, Fritz, about you, but the older you get, the more you realize you want to give something to the next ones. You know, you want to train the trainers because they will be the next ones doing things. So I have, you mentioned my job as a vision fast guide. So I want to be, when I'm old, I want to be this, you know, this witch, this lively, exciting witch, you know, with the lively eyes still, who can be there and, you know, who can give something to others. Maybe in a vision fast, I will sit there as this old woman, you know, holding the energy. That could be something I could do one day.
Now, there's a nice segue to maybe actually the end part of our discussion, Karin. That is, can you imagine, maybe by the time you are going to become that witch you desire to be, what would your advice be to the people who then come to you and say, hey, what can I do? Is there any generic advice you would give people?
Generic advice. I think being true to yourself is something that I believe you should be. You know, I remember leaving jobs where people told me, why do you leave this job? It's just such a good job, but it wasn't the right one for me, you know, or by one stepping out and falling into a deep depression because nothing worked in my life, and then getting out of this dark hole again. So my advice would be true to yourself and see your life as a journey, you know. See your life as the landscape of your soul, where you can find all sorts of adventures, and you will have certain aspects that are not good. You will be there and dig into the brown stuff, you know, but that's the way of life. So I truly believe, also from being a Vision Fast guide, that if we look at the circle of life, you know, the South with the energy of children, the energy of sexuality, of working hard, and then we move on to the West, the energy of introspection, of really digging deep into the brown stuff, and then the energy of the North being responsible, the community aspect, and then the East with the spiritual aspect coming from the East, the unknown. All these aspects come together. So being yourself in life with all aspects of your personality, the dark sides and the light sides, you know, this is what we should live, you know, all of us. And one of my mentors once told me, we, especially in Western Europe, we tend to be very holy about stuff, you know. And she said, you know, you don't have to be holy, you have to be whole.
I need to pause and think about that, but yeah, I understand what you're sharing with us. So, Karin, maybe also just to finish off, I want to briefly go back to Ashoka. Can any organization apply, or does it have to meet a couple of criteria before you're allowed to be a member? So how does that work?
If you go to the website, ashoka.org, you will see there is the possibility to nominate an organization. So if you know an organization that you feel creates systemic change, has the entrepreneurial spirit, has the ethical fiber, has a real impact-oriented driven mind, then you can nominate this organization, and we look into this organization and see if it could become an Ashoka Fellow. And then this person or this organization would get a stipend.
Okay.
Bear in mind that the criteria are very strict, so creating systemic change and not just, helping some people. It's wonderful if you do that, direct impact. It's very needed in this world. But what Ashoka focuses on is more the indirect impact and a focus on systemic social innovation. But you're very welcome to try. We would love to welcome whoever hears that into our network.
Good. Well, this is also a call to action to the listeners and the viewers. Just so, based on what you share with us, Karin, if you know of this organization or individual who is creating systemic change, Ashoka wants to know about that and support that. So you could say it becomes successful or even more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also asked me to recommend books. I wanted to recommend one book for everybody, which is Breath from James Nestor. It's about how we breathe and how important that is for our health. Just try it. It's wonderful, I think. And the other one is that in collaboration with World Reader, we developed a collection of illustrated books and activities to inspire children everywhere to unlock their power to become change makers. So check out our ashoka.org website, and you find all these incredibly and based on true events, true people, stories about young women and young kids, young boys creating change in the world. Read it.
Good advice, Karin. I want to thank you so much for sharing your enthusiastic, I would say, thoughts on, you could say, how we can create systemic change, how you as an individual can do that. Some very good hard lessons there. Wish you all the best. I think it's the very first time I'm ever going to say this to somebody. I wish you lots of luck in your journey to become a witch. Thank you.
I love it. Well, you're going to be the wizard, maybe, Okay, thanks so much, Fritz. Thank you to all of you out there. Enjoy the ride, your life. Ciao.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.